Hello and welcome to May's book review. And yes, we are back. The monitors have gone and I'm back in front of my bookshelves. Whoop, 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 whoop. We actually have 5 books to get through, so I'm going to start pretty quick and try and be concise about the ones that we've read. The first book that I read was Scrappy Little Nobody by Anna Kendrick. And obviously, this is her autobiography. I don't read a lot of non-fiction, but I've got kind of into biographies this year, and I am a fan of Anna Kendrick. But I do prefer the other cover with the navy blue. I think that's a better cover than this one, but that's by the by. I really enjoyed this book. This is probably one of my favourites, if not my favourite autobiography I've read in a very long time. And Anna Kendrick, it just felt like she was me. Now that sounds weird, but so much of the stuff that she was writing could have been something that I would have written in my own autobiography, other than the fact that obviously she's American and a very successful actress. And confident, which, you know, none of those things is me. But the relationship she had with her parents and her brother and some of the little quirks she has are basically me. And maybe that added to my enjoyment of this book, because I could really relate to a lot of the stuff that she was talking about. But it was also just a very easy book to read. It was paced really well. I feel that although I think this is supposedly essays rather than an autobiography, because it doesn't go from, you know, like a birth to present day, it sort of goes to topics rather than timeline. But it does cover childhood to now. For example, I didn't realise she started so young on Broadway. I feel like Anna Kendrick's take on fame and the film industry and all of that is very interesting and well put together. There weren't that many stories from like on set. Obviously there were some, it's a big part of her life, but I thought there would have been a lot more, and I don't know how I feel about it, because I would have been interested in reading about the films, because obviously that's where I've come to Anna Kendrick from. But at the same time, I'm really glad that she didn't focus on that. She focused on key points in life, and for example there's chapters on boys and various different shows, or her feelings on being in various different shows, her fashion choices, etc, etc. So if you're wanting to come to this because you think it's going to be in depth into what happened on the set of Pitch Perfect or Twilight or any of those films that Anna Kendrick was in, it's not. But that's part of the reason why I enjoyed it so much, despite the fact that I did want it. That's where I'm a bit torn. One thing I will say though is this doesn't have those nice glossy pages with the pictures. There are pictures in this book. For example, this one. But they're all in black and white, so would have liked that. But on the whole, I really did enjoy Scrappy Little Nobody by Anna Kendrick, and I would recommend it if you are a fan. Because there's no point reading it if you don't like her, because why would you do that? It's an autobiography. Why would you read one about someone that you don't like? So I'm still doing my alternating Kindle physical book thing. It's going pretty well. I quite like the change of feel, I guess. And the next one I read were We Were Liars by Lockhart. When I came to this book, all I really knew about it is that people cry while reading it, and there's a big massive twist. Now I didn't get that same reading experience. I thought the book was fine, but I didn't love it. The twist I felt was kind of predictable. I'm not really one to try and work out these things. I like to just go with the motion of a book. But even I had basically figured it out by the time we got to the twist. I also found it kind of underwhelming. I read it and then I carried on reading, and then I was like, oh, that's the twist, isn't it? Oh, okay. So yeah, I sort of found that underwhelming, considering that is the main reason I knew the book, was because it had this amazing twist in it. It was pretty underwhelming. I also really didn't like the author's style, but again, I don't know whether that's just because I was on Kindle, but there was these like weird gaps in sentences, and if she said "gat my gat" one more time, I was going to throw my Kindle, because it just really irritated me. You don't need to say that every time you say that guy's name. You could have just said his name. So there were bits like that that really irked me and sort of took me out of the reading experience, which maybe is why I didn't get as much enjoyment as others have with it. And there were some really annoying metaphors in it, but from the top of my head I can't think of one. And I did kind of feel like it was a book about moany entitled rich people, a little bit. The Sinclair family really should just talk a bit more, and then maybe they wouldn't find themselves in some of the situations. So yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of it. I liked the story of it, I just didn't like how the writing style was in it. To me it sort of grated a bit. It was alright. I know people absolutely adore this book though, so maybe take my opinion with a pinch of salt. But yeah, so that was We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. I then read The Seven Deaths of Evelyn. We're going with Evelyn or Evelyn? I'm going to go with Evelyn Hardcastle, which is the book I picked up in Waterstones when I wanted to go and buy loads of books on my first trip out to the shops. If you haven't seen that video, I'll link it up the top for you. And I actually got to this really quickly because I just thought the concept of it was really, really interesting, and I really wanted to know whether it matched my excitement, if you get what I mean. So the concept is basically that Evelyn Hardcastle's family, parents, have a party where she gets murdered, where she dies. And there is one person trying to figure out how she dies, who is Aidan Bishop, but every day he wakes up as a different person at the party. So he's getting just snippets of information here, there and everywhere. And I have to say, this is probably, it's going to sound weird, but this is my second favourite book of the year. My first is P.S. I Love You. I loved that book so much that this didn't quite come up to that, but it was so close. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really cleverly written. The pacing of it was good. I mean, it never felt like you were rushing through anything, but you were never stagnating either. And the way that the clues came in was so subtle and clever that it could have been missed, the links between each of the people. Yeah, I just really enjoyed it. I had a thoroughly good time with this book. And obviously with those snippets you're always wondering where it would go, because each time something was fed to you, you take slightly different paths, I guess. I mean, I wasn't expecting it to be quite as it was, because there is an element of a game within this. I did get a little bit of Westworld vibes from it. Not that I enjoyed that TV show, but I did enjoy this book. So I wasn't expecting that, but that didn't matter at all. I really liked how it was written, and yeah, would just very much recommend reading this book. It is quite claustrophobic as a read. You are, despite the fact that it's a sprawling estate, in one location for the entirety of this book, and it's not thin. There is what we're talking 505 pages in one location. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to give away anything, but as I say, if you haven't read it, thoroughly recommend. My second favourite book of the year, and I can't see it really being topped by much, to be honest. I think it's going to stay up there in my top 5 for 2021. Just really enjoyed it. I don't think I said who it's by. So that is The Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. I then read Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery, although the version I had said it was by Lucy Maud Montgomery, but there you go. This is because I am trying to read more classics. I feel like that's a gap in my reading repertoire, but I'm starting with the ones that are for children because I do have a love-hate relationship with classics, because I struggle sometimes with the words in them and how they're written, and they make me feel a little bit thick sometimes. But with that all in mind, Anne of Green Gables is actually really accessible. It did take me probably about a chapter to get into the writing style, but once Anne comes in, you're flying. She is such a talkative child. I mean, she's incessant really in talking, but I guess because she is a child talking, it just makes it easier to read. So that helped me certainly in getting into and my enjoyment of this book. If you don't know, Anne Green Gables follows Anne, who is an orphan, and she gets adopted by a brother and sister who live on a sort of island in Canada, and they have a house called Green Gables, and that's where she lives. And you just go through her growing up and all the sort of scrapes and escapades that she gets into. With a lot of classics, there's always that moment where you go, oh, that's uncomfortable, because they're just not PC anymore. And there was only like one sentence in the whole of this book that made me feel like that, despite the fact that it was written in 1908. Can I emphasise 1908? And it wasn't at all un-PC, as I say, other than one little sentence. I mean, there is misogyny in it, where they're saying that girls shouldn't do this, that and the other. But we can get over that a bit more easily, I think. Well, certainly I can. Maybe that's wrong. And Anne as a character I really liked. As I say, she is an incessant chatterbox. She's pretty precocious. She is often away with the fairies in her own mind, imagining all sorts of things, which you can kind of understand what with the upbringing that she's had. And one of the main things I liked is that yes, she got into trouble and things happened that weren't deemed as good behaviour, but the adults always saw their part in what happened. So yes, there are sort of morals in the book, but more so for the adults than for Anne herself. And I just thought that was something I haven't really read before, certainly in older fiction. Often if the children have done something wrong, then it's the child's fault and they should have been seen and not heard, essentially. So for the adults to go, actually, you know what, part of the reason why that's happened is because I've done this, I really liked that. So I was actually pleasantly surprised with Anne Green Gables, and it's made me feel more confident and comfortable in picking up some other classic novels and fiction. So I'm going to attempt to try and read one of these a month, but we'll see how we get on with that. So that was Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. So the last book for this video, although it may not be my last book of the month because we do have about a week left, so I may get one or two more in. But the last book that I finished yesterday is Mixtape by Jane Sanderson. This follows Daniel and Alison, who were teenage lovers. They were in a relationship back in '79 in Sheffield. Something happens and Alison just disappears, and then I can't do the maths, but 2012, Daniel finds Alison on Twitter and starts sending her songs, and that reignites their relationship. It's you know, a contemporary romance. You know what's going to happen. You know they're going to come together. It's not a spoiler in saying that. Things I liked about this book was the different timelines. So certainly for the first half of the book, you go in a 3-chapter cycle where you have them in '79, then what Daniel's up to in 2012, and then what Alison is up to in 2012. And I liked those dual timelines. I particularly liked their story in '79. That was my favourite part of the book, actually, was them as teenagers and seeing their relationship and seeing her relationship, Alison that is, her relationship with Daniel's dad in particular. I also liked how music is interweaved through this book, as I'm a reasonably big music fan myself. I liked that a lot, although some of the artists I wasn't really aware of because I am considerably younger than the characters in this book. But they did have a, you know, the list of songs that are sent at the beginning, so I did go through them and have a listen, and I actually knew more than I thought I did. So I liked that aspect, but there was quite a bit about this book that I wasn't a fan of. And largely, I have realised that I am not a fan of novels, fiction, books, whatever you want to call them, where the main characters end up cheating on their respective partners. So obviously Daniel and Alison have their own lives. As they come together and their feelings grow again, you've got the respective partners. Now I don't think I'm spoiling anything here because it's a romance book, so you know they're going to come together, but apologies if I have. So yeah, I didn't feel comfortable with that aspect of it at all. I don't know whether it's just me who feels like that, but as much as Alison and Daniel's relationship was nice, I still couldn't help feeling for their respective families and that kind of thing. So that really did tarnish my enjoyment of this book. Also, it took me a very long time to realise how old they're supposed to be in the modern day, the present day periods of this book, because it reads basically the same as 79, so the characters read basically the same, so it doesn't feel like they've aged, even though they have. It's been about 30 years or something like that, so that took me a little while as well. I would say if you're thinking about picking this book up but you've got certain things that trigger you, it might be worth looking at content warnings, because there are some not so pleasant scenes in this surrounding Alison, so I would advise checking those out before you pick this up. Also, this cover is so easily smudged. There are so many fingerprints on this now. I think it's just because of the material that it's in, but as you can tell, I don't really show that I have read books. They pretty much keep their new feeling after I've read them, so those smudges irritate me slightly, but that's my own problem. So there you go, there are the 5 books that I have read in May. If you've read any, please let me know what you thought in the comments below. I'm always open for a chat, and if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe. We have got some exciting things coming up in the vlogs, and obviously I will still be reading away, and I'll come back to you at the beginning of July with June's book review. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!